What up, my fellow photographers? G Taylor here with yet another tailored eye video and another set, as you can see. I go through these things like paper. Well, join me here in this video as we sit back and journey from the full year that it has been since I picked up my very first camera and started on this whole photography journey. Good Lord, time flies. Let's jump into it. Okay, it's been a full year, 365 days, 8,760 hours, 525,600 minutes. You know what? Forget it. You get the idea. It's been an entire year since I decided to grab my first mirrorless camera and jump into this whole photography thing with tailored eye photography. And boy, has it been a ride. There's some things that I kind of expected, some things I really didn't expect at all. But all in all, this year has taught me a lot about photography. And in this video, I just want to sit back and recap on how it started and how it's going. Now, I'm not going to start at the very beginning, when I got my camera and everything else here. If you want to check that out, you can check the video out here to see where I really started. But long story short, I did a ton of research on all different cameras, Fujifilm, Canon, of course, Sony, pretty much all the big names, but I ended up landing on the A6300. Now, if you watched any of my previous videos, I absolutely love that camera. It packs a serious punch, doesn't break the bank at the same time. But I will say, back on February 7th, 2020, yeah, I know, it was essentially the biggest set piece for me to jump into photography. I ended up buying it secondhand from a pastor on Facebook Marketplace. This camera had already been ran through its paces and it showed a little bit, but it worked like a champ. That thing has gotten me through so much in that past year that I still can't believe that I bought it used and it still had that much punch left in it. Now, I really did want the 6500, but it was a little bit out of my price range at the time. But I will say, if you are starting out, definitely grab something used. Get something to get you started, because I have learned within this year, it's not all about the gear. That is a big thing. It definitely ties to your photography, but is not the only thing that you need. Fast forward a few weeks, and about a good 60 hours of YouTube videos later, I felt I had a good understanding of both my camera, the kit lens, pretty much everything. I thought I was so awesome back then. Yeah, as you can tell, I still had a lot of work to do when it comes to learning photography. Around this time, I figured I needed some help from folks who knew what they were doing. So, of course, I naturally jumped on Facebook, tons of photography groups, anything I can think of, even our local store down here in Austin, Precision Camera, to get some guidance. Little did I know that there was so many people out there that was willing to help. I ended up going to a few photography meetups and ended up hanging out with this amazing group of ladies that I now call my photo fam, and learned so much about just general photography. We ended up trading headshot pictures, tips and tricks and everything, and got really close. And this is, of course, before COVID went crazy. So we were like, hey, let's do this again. We'll learn a lot more. And of course, COVID happened. So needless to say, I still reach out to them every now and again when it comes to tips, or if they need a second photographer, or even just someone to critique my previous work. As you see, it needed a lot of it. Alongside that, tons of Facebook groups and online learning helped me really step up my photography game. At that point, I did feel a lot more confident in my work to literally start putting it out there. Hence why I started this YouTube channel. I had to learn more in order to get my photos and videos to turn out like theirs. The cool thing is, there was no one head of the group. We were all in different areas in photography. We had a few folks who have done previous professional work. We had people like myself who was just starting out, and a nice little mix of in between. So we had a lot of experience between us, and it really helped each one of us in different ways to get more out of our photography. I still hang out with these ladies every day and talk to them as well through our Facebook group, and they have helped a ton. At this point, I'm trying to wrap my head around running my own photography business. So where do I turn? Of course, right back to YouTube. And I'm so glad I did. I discovered so many more amazing photographers, like the amazing Peter McKinnon and all his moodiness photos, Manny Ortiz and his slick edits and his awesome tips, Flash Film Academy, which gave me pretty much all the direction I could possibly need as far as running a photography business. Matt Granger and his amazing guides on posing, lighting, and everything in between. And fellow Sony shooter Arthur R., probably one of my favorite YouTube channels to the day. After watching all of their videos, listening to all their guides and tips, and alongside a few helps from a couple of my photography friends, thanks Trent, I felt super comfortable in starting this journey into the world of professional photography, but I needed a name, and I still haven't figured that part out yet. That name though. Now this is where it gets really fun. It took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to call this whole thing. Now, as we know now what it's called, the journey was half the battle. I went back and forth on tons of names, whether if I wanted to stick with a single camera name or my own name or some variation of the two. I was gonna go with Tailored Photos, which kind of had a nice little ring to it, but felt really short to me. I also thought of Tailored Photos and Prints, a little bit longer, but it was more of a mouthful than I really wanted to start saying, which trust me, I trip up even saying it right now. And then Tailored Photography had the ring I was going for, but I felt like it was still missing something. I wanted it to be a little more unique and have more to it when you say it. At that point, Tailored Eye Photography was born. Yeah, I know, kind of still a mouthful, but for me, it felt perfect. It kind of ties a lot of plays on words, which I love about it. Definitely didn't want it to be just a simple fly-by-night name, but I wanted it to stick with you and make sure it actually said something when you said it. Now, if you don't know about the play on words, it kind of ties in a lot of things all at once. So first off, as you know, G. Taylor, a little play on my last name of Tailored Eye Photography, since of course, I'm your photographer and I have my eye that's only tailored to my vision. And also, being tailored, make sure that my photos are going to be custom to my subjects. Never want to take the same picture twice or actually use the same location twice. Probably why I always have a ton of different sets too, now that I think about it. But going through each one of those and just really diving into it, I just fell in love with the name and stuck with it. The only part that was probably the hardest was coming up with the logo. Everything screamed eyeball to me and I didn't want to do that. It reminds me of the old school Neversoft logo, if you remember them. Rest in peace, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. Didn't want to have that creepiness to it, but I did draw up a couple of rough sketches, as you can see. Took me a few tries, but after about a good couple of weeks of drawing and redrawing, as you can see, not an artist here, I ended up finally landing on the logo that we see today. Okay, so we've got the camera figured out. We've got the settings figured out. We actually learned how to edit photos, which was a big thing that I did not realize was a part of photography. We got all that figured out, and now I am pumped. It's about mid-March in 2020, and I'm ready to start jumping in the deep end. So I make a website, put my photos out on Facebook, Instagram, you name it, waiting for paying clients to come in, and nothing. I didn't realize I had no way of getting actual clients to see work that I've done. All I got were friends and family and colleagues liking and sharing my posts, but no one actually paying for my work. After going to Flash Film Academy yet again and learning how to generate leads and get customers to pay for you, I ended up landing my very first paid job. My younger brother knew that one of his coworkers was actually opening up a restaurant and they needed photos for their new building and everything else. And of course, they threw me out there. Me and him ended up talking and agreeing, both being small businesses, that we wanted to help each other out. He ended up being my very first paid client. Now, looking back on it, I was super nervous. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get everything right, but now that was probably the most simple job I've had. But the cool part was all that nervousness ended up fading away, ended up having fun and producing some very great images that they actually still use here today. Once it was all said and done, they couldn't believe how great these photos came out. They really didn't expect that much being a first-time photographer, but I've been back there a couple of times too. So now that I got my first gig under my belt, I felt empowered. I was like, yes, I'm a photographer now. 5-star reviews, they absolutely loved me, and I could not wait for more. After that, I was putting myself out there for just about every photography job I could think of. Birthdays, you're selling your car on Facebook, you wanted just pictures of your significant other. I was doing it all. Learn that's not the best way to put yourself out there because you spread yourself thin and get wore out really quick. So I backed off a little bit and decided to really restructure and see what I wanted to do behind the camera. Luckily, while I was doing that, there was a little bit of a lull. Didn't get any more inquiries, not a lot of folks looking for photography, which in hindsight, I definitely needed because I ended up getting a single solitary email that really changed how I looked at myself as a photographer. I still remember the night this email came across my laptop. I was loading in some photos from a previous shoot I did, not expecting any new work to come in. All of a sudden, my MacBook went off, that little familiar chime. The only thing I saw on my notification panel was Tailored Eye Photography, Wedding Photographer. Oh my God, is this real? Is this fake? Is this somebody just messing with me? I honestly lost my mind at that moment. I think it took me a good 10 minutes to actually open the email and read it because I did not believe this was actually happening. I had just got done with my very first paid gig, and in the back of my mind, yes, I did want to do wedding photography, but did not expect it this soon. So after my mini freak out, I read the email and turns out, yes, it was actually 100% real. Now, again, Greg in 2021, looking back on Greg in 2020, yes, definitely should have handled that a lot better, but ended up going over really well. This was my very second gig. I didn't tell my clients at the time, but they were actually getting married and they had to, of course, make their wedding smaller thanks to COVID. So they just needed someone local to the area that was just going to do a couple of photos for them. After I emailed them back, asked them what kind of wedding they were looking at, all kind of good stuff, they actually said, okay, cool. Well, we'll be in contact with you. At that moment, I had another freak out because I was only looking at photography for a business standpoint when it came to businesses like I just done. So I had to learn how to be a wedding photographer in a matter of about 3 months. While I'm learning how to be a wedding photographer, I'm also emailing them back and forth. Long story short, they actually agreed to let me become their wedding photographer, which for me was a huge, huge thing. My photos were good enough to have someone let me photograph their special day. That is a huge deal for me. So I definitely did not want to mess this up. And I want to give a special shout out to one of my all-time favorite YouTube channels, John Branch the Fourth Photography. You have saved me so many times when it comes to wedding photography. Your full day videos, best thing ever on YouTube. So after doing a ton of research, buying a bit more gear, more lights, better flash, stuff like that, I ended up meeting with them for the first time. Of course, COVID precautions prevailed, but they were thoroughly impressed. The wedding wasn't for another couple of months, so I had more time to hone my craft. And I actually went back to my photography group, my photo fam, and ran them through what was going on. I will honestly say having another group of photographers to back you up and to bounce things off of is the absolute best thing you can do for yourself, whether if you want to do this professionally or not. So the entire couple of months that I had before my very first booked wedding, I actually got the opportunity to be a second shooter on a couple of even smaller weddings. One thing I can definitely say, if you're out trying to get experience, get with other photographers to just piggyback and hang out with them on their shoots, because nothing gives you more experience than actually getting out there and doing it. The few weddings that I did that were super small, but it gave me some insight to, of course, posing your bride, posing your groom, getting photos of the big events that you definitely don't want to miss. But it helped out a ton. I definitely encourage getting with photographers in your area, of course, safely, and seeing about hanging out with them on their smaller shoots and getting that hands-on experience, because there's nothing like it. So within those few months, I did a few small weddings. I actually got booked for even smaller ones in the same time before my big one, which helped out a ton. At this point, I've actually have done 4 complete weddings, which I am super excited about that I've gotten done, and every one of my clients have been ecstatic with their photos. I didn't foresee myself doing any weddings in that first year, but like I mentioned, already having 4 of them under my belt, now I have a better grip on them, from super small intimate weddings to legitimately big weddings. At this point, we're rounding out to the end of the year, and I'm reeling off of this overnight success that I've had in photography and did not even expect half the stuff that happened. So after doing those weddings and delivering them to my clients, which they absolutely loved all their photos, this is around November at the end of 2020. Complete slowdown again, but I was able to take a moment to reflect and see just exactly what had gone on. At that point, I had done 4 whole weddings, both big and small, about 4 different headshot sessions, and actually a couple of engagements alongside with those too. Little did I know, starting this earlier in 2020, that by the end of 2020, I would actually have a lot of big accomplishments that I didn't even expect. To be honest, I thought I'd be doing that this year here in 2021. One of the biggest things I did learn as far as photography last year is keep your camera with you. Some of my favorite photos that I've captured last year was just from me driving around town, hanging out at parks, and just being snap happy and taking photos. But having that practice really helped hone my skills, and I'm pretty sure there's still got a ton more to learn. Now with all that brings us to pretty much where we are right now, sitting here in 2021. Hasn't been as crazy as 2020, but it's getting there. But at this point, it has completely calmed down, which, whew, I needed at this point. The crazy part is that this just came from an idea and a hobby of mine that I wanted to do. To actually produce stuff that people actually like and want to see has been a mind-blowing experience for me in this year. So with everything I learned and experienced last year, I'm gonna take that and fine-tune this little raft that I'm riding into this gigantic ocean of photography to get even better. That way I'm always moving forward in my photography. And that's the general theme. Always keep yourself moving forward. Right now, if you're just starting out, like I mentioned in my very first video, looking back on it, you're gonna see that growth and it's going to be staggering. If honestly anyone came to me from the future from last year and said, hey, all this crazy stuff's gonna happen with Tailored Photography, I wouldn't have believed them anyway. But as you see, I'm sitting here doing it right now. So with all that being said, that's been the journey. All the way from the beginning of February 7th, 2020 till another year later. I honestly have no idea what to expect in this year. Honestly, I don't think anybody knows what to expect in this year, but all I know is this has been an amazing ride this whole way through. And I want to say thanks to pretty much any and everybody who's liked my photos, liked my videos, left comments, constructive or otherwise, because I'm still learning when it comes down to it. But thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. It's not a lot right now, but it means the world to me for you guys just to watch these videos and to see what I'm producing. I've always wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I had no clue what to even say or do, let alone know I was going to be doing photography, which is also a thing I've been wanting to do. So to be able to combine both of these at the same time and actually produce something that folks are enjoying really warms my heart. And again, I want to say thank you guys for everything that you've done, from the simple likes to the comments to sharing these videos to full on subscribing, which, side note, like I mentioned at the top of the video, definitely going to be putting out a lot more videos this year. I actually have a couple in the can right now that are going to be coming up hopefully more sooner than later, but this is definitely one I wanted to get done just to commemorate this full year of tailored eye photography and just this crazy journey that it has been so far. And again, I thank you all for joining me on this ride. So with all that being said, guys, I want to say thanks again for hanging out with me here at Tailored Eye Photography. Be on the lookout for my next video, hopefully coming soon. Again, like and subscribe, share this video. It helps me out so much. I know right now I have around like 60 subscribers. Hopefully one day that'll be a lot more. But again, I want to say thank you guys for hanging out with me here at Tailored Eye Photography, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.